Oh, Svitlana, I am excited for this episode because I always enjoy when you are analyzing one of your own games. Now, why are we analyzing one of your games today?
It's because it comes from the Canadian University Championship, which was held this weekend in Kingston in Canada, and I participated as part of my University of Ottawa team, and it was a really fun weekend, and I wanted to show one of my games from that tournament. I played on board one, which means I got to play the strongest player from every other university team. And surprisingly, I scored 5 out of 5 and got the first board prize in the tournament, which I didn't expect at all, but I'm really happy about it. And overall, the team finished eighth, which we could have finished a bit higher if we had won the last round. But we were playing against the defending champions in this
Goodness.
matchup that I'm about to show. It was Université de Montréal. So that's the game we're about to see. I played a strong FM as black, and it was one of my best games, I think.
Okay, I'm super curious. Everybody, for you, of course, at home, you know the drill. On the ChessBase news site, there is exactly this game we're looking at. It is analyzed by Svitlana. So she's putting a lot of effort into this, as all of our chess experts with all the shows are doing anyway. So it would be appreciated if you download it and check it out, either on a real board or on ChessBase or whatever program you're using. So have fun with that. Alrighty. Now, you had no chance to prepare a single little bit against your opponent, or did you have?
Yeah, so the pairings for these rounds were posted 5 minutes before the round. And so it was really difficult to
Blitz.
prepare. And the only thing I knew is basically that he was playing e4.
Good.
And I just had basically a chance in these 5 minutes to decide what I was going to play. And I decided to go for something fun, and we played the Portuguese Gambit.
Oh my goodness. I hope one day you will make a Fritz trainer about this. Okay, this is just a secret hope. Yeah. So we made an episode for you at home about this exact opening. Check it out. It is very valuable and I highly recommend it. All right.
Yes, it's a really fun gambit. And usually, what happens, as we already know, is that white just gives up the pawn eventually. Usually, lines go like this, and there's a lot of options. They can play check, they can play covers, they can cover again with the f3 pawn, and there's a lot of options there. And usually, you just end up winning this pawn on d5 back, and the game goes on.
Mhm.
But in this game, he played one of the only lines that holds onto that pawn. And
That is
although
tricky.
initially I wasn't in an aggressive mood for the game, but now I had to play for the initiative because I was going to be down a pawn
The
otherwise.
blood was boiling out of a sudden.
So at this point, after c4 has been played, you need to play either c6 or e6 to open up the center and get some piece activity. So I played c6. If he had played d4, this could have been a transposition to the Panov attack, the
Yeah.
Caro-Kann Panov attack, if you basically change the move order. But he didn't do that. He actually took my pawn, so we had a um, full gambit, basically,
Yeah,
in this game.
you have a pawn less, but two knights out. Good.
Exactly. So at this point, which side do you think you would rather play for? The side with the pawn, or black, which has a pawn but which doesn't have a pawn but easier development?
Yeah, I'm just a fan of easier and nicer development. I mean, we can castle in the next two moves and get another bishop out. Even even already attack on f2. I definitely prefer black. I guess there's a lot of people who might prefer white because of the pawn. So yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's probably quite equal, I assume.
Exactly, exactly. As most of these gambits, it's in equal position because there's counterplay, but white does have a pawn. So, before I would probably prefer the side with the pawn, but once I played this game, I kind of get it. I kind of get it that it's so much easier and the moves just flow. At least that's what happened in this game,
Yeah.
that all of the moves were kind of just flowing and I didn't have to worry too much about my king safety or my position, and that I would only play um, the most the most like moves that maintain the initiative. So I played bishop c5, which is something you mentioned. And another important thing in this position is that I have more space. So this pawn on e5 prevents d4 at any point, and that prevents white from getting any space in the center. And this pawn, when it's here, it's preventing the bishop. So it's kind of like a lot of things are piling up that makes white have a bit of a more passive position. Now, white plays bishop to e3.
Yeah, that's what I was also expecting, actually.
Yeah, so just to prevent anything on f2, and I didn't take here. I decided to keep the tension there, but if I take, I considered playing this and then queen b6, attacking both pawns at the same time, but they have queen d2 and pretty safe defense there. So I keep the tension with knight to d4, putting it in the center, and hopefully it will have some more threats in the future. He went h3 just to prevent my bishop to g4 or knight to g4, which were quite big threats.
I think I need to ask you just one short thing. I figured it out myself, but if instead b4 would have been played with the tricky queen check on a4, it doesn't matter for black because the knight can go back to c6, right?
Yeah, so I was looking at this during the game. Like I noticed it after I played knight d4, and I was like, oh, what if this works? But yeah, so basically, even in the worst case scenario, well, here, yes, the knight could go, but why not play this
Oh
and then
my god, now I
this?
see.
So there's even this as an option.
That is crazy. Okay, nice. Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
even already there's a titsy tiny couple of tricks there if you're not too careful with
Yeah,
white.
and h3 doesn't look like the move you want to play, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you need to prevent knight g4 and bishop g4. So it made sense that he played it. I castled, and as you said, just quick development and castled already, while white still needs to decide what to do. Here was probably the first like decisive like a moment of the game where you had to make a decision. Which plan do you think we go for as black based on what you see white doing?
Yeah. So I cannot imagine white wants to castle alongside. It just looks, I mean, maybe that is an idea because the queen goes there. And if this is the case, why not get our last minor piece out, maybe on d7 or even e6, even f5, it almost doesn't matter, and then push a5 and yeah, pile up against the king first, while our king is in safety. Yeah, that's my but that's only an idea which I have when white is castling queenside. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess
Yeah,
just
so
get the minor piece out and look.
getting the bishop out can be good. For f5, I was a little bit like worried about, if he castles long and then plays g4, g5, I didn't want to give extra like tempos on
True.
that side of the board. So I went for something a little bit different, which I don't know if anybody has also guessed that move, but I went for a6 with the idea of b5 later.
Perfect.
And the thing is, interestingly enough, you could have played b5 immediately, which is what the computer actually suggests. And the reasoning is that if they take, apparently they say that black is winning after bishop b7,
Another
which
pawn.
it's not like intuitive right away, but it's just because white has no castling for the next while. The position is too opened up on the king side, and the bishop is preventing other development. So you can justify it, but I would have not have guessed that it's so bad
So
for
I
white.
see. So one of the next moves, if white would castle now, could be potentially a6, even,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
a6, rook c8, right, is just right
Yes.
away the open
Yes.
file.
Yes. 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 All
So
right.
many things.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
something which you don't have on your mind very much,
yeah,
I
so
guess.
we could also have done that. And if something like this, still bishop b7, and it's not winning, but apparently a lot better for still using that
Ooh,
same
yeah.
trick.
Yeah.
Still a lot better for black. So I didn't really think about b5 initially,
Yeah.
but I just prepared it with a6, which is very similar idea. White played knight e2, so they have to develop somehow. And I do think that it was a little bit difficult for white to develop. Now I play b5, which is once again, in some lines, it does give up the pawn. For example, if they take, take, and then capture the knight like this, not with the knight, but with the bishop, and then take here, I considered this. I did not think white was going to go for this.
No.
The bishop pair is so strong.
Yeah.
The e-file, like the king is going to be
Oh,
under fire. You have nowhere to castle.
you
The knight has
dream
nowhere to
for a
come
position
back.
like this, yeah.
So that pawn I thought was very much worth it, and I didn't think the opponent was going to take it. And he was, I think, surprised by b5 because that kind of prevents not prevents, but it makes castling long
Obsolete,
a
yeah.
little bit harder. So he goes knight to g3, which I thought was the best move because he wants to play knight to e4, and the knight would be standing pretty well there, attacking my bishop as well, so it would kind of ruin a bit of the harmony here that all of my pieces have in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Here at this point, I played something that was not best, but it had the right intent. It was better to play just bishop b7 right away, but I played takes first and then bishop b7 just so that he doesn't have this e4 square at all. So I realized that this pawn, that getting rid of this pawn weakness was like not something I wanted to do, but I thought that I got the b file in return and also the control of the e4 square, which before that he could have played knight e4 and defended it with his pawn. So that was kind of the reasoning. The position is still like, equal, maybe a bit better for black even.
Yeah.
So
But now it really has to work out for black, this initiative. Otherwise, it's if white can get out of
so
this grip, then it's a bit maybe a bit different.
yeah, so now that there's no weakness, it's like a full extra pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So now he also cannot, the other idea of this was that he cannot move the bishop really. It's going to be dangerous
True.
to give up that pawn. And so white is out of useful moves and they have to decide something. So he goes for long castle. Risky, but I kind of saw it coming because what else do you do? The king needs to go at some point. So what do you think the next plan is for black?
Well, rook b8, queen b6, and checkmate.
Great idea. That's very close to what happened in the game.
Yeah.
Eventually.
There's enough pieces there too, so I think just plan an attack.
Plan an attack. That's good. So rook b8 right away would have probably been met with f4, which I thought created some counterplay. It undermines the knight. And if I ever take, this rook is also on b8. So I thought that rook b8 I would play, just not right away. And so to start the attack, I played queen to a5.
Yeah.
So one of the moves that activates the queen and brings it to the queen side. At this point, the opponent played king to b1. He could have, of course, defended in other ways, but honestly, I feel like we were kind of on the same page about a lot of things. So whatever he was playing, I kind of was expecting, and whatever I was playing was probably also expected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to b1 just defending.
Did both of you lose any time at that point, or was it quite similar on time?
Yeah, so the time was going down like pretty quickly. I think at this point we were at like 50 minutes each. I don't really remember, but it was like we did take our time in the opening as well because it wasn't like a theory type of opening where I had to make some precise moves to keep the initiative, and he also wanted to make the best possible moves to develop his pieces. So we did think in the opening. And I'll tell you when we got into time trouble, because then that's an important moment.
Oh, I see.
So I play rook b8, which is what you said, and he goes knight to d5. So I calculated this one, and I thought it was a fun tactic that he's trying to do. Do you see the idea?
Yeah, well, it's like almost the typical Sicilian trap I learned in the Dragon, for example. So if you take the queen on d2, then the white knight just gives a check on f6. Yeah. This has to be reacted to, and then out of a sudden, the position
is... So it makes use of that like discovered attack on the queen, and I cannot capture the knight because my queen is under attack. As you said, a very typical Sicilian trick. So instead of that, I just calmly went back and attacks the knight. So he wants to go back. That's great because white just, lost a move for no reason. Well, my rook also came here.
Yes, true.
So, so this attacks the knight and lets it decide what to do. The knight took, queen took, and here my opponent started thinking for a long time. Probably spent like 20 minutes on the next move, and I kind of get why, because
What to do?
there's not that many useful moves that you can
Yeah.
make before I just, go all out on the b file. And ideally, as white, you really want to start, like you would really like all of your pawns to march forward, but they can't.
Yeah.
Partially because of this bishop, holding this bishop there and the pawn there as well, and also because of this knight here, and just the fact that there's no like weaknesses on this side of the board. So, the pawn march would take like way too long, and it's not really going to be possible there. So he played rook here so that his bishop can finally be free. And yeah, the issue with all of these bishop moves is that after I take, it's not just the pawn, it's knight f3 that's also an issue at the end. If
Yeah.
it was just the pawn, then maybe white can sacrifice it and start the g file attack. But knight to f3 is usually a fork on the queen and wherever that rook goes. So that was the point of why he couldn't do that. So he plays rook here. I play queen to b6, so it's exactly the confirmation that you said, that you predicted would happen. Then the next rook joins, and
Nice.
queen to c3. What I really liked about this game is that all of my pieces were kind of like in harmony, and each of them had something to do.
True.
And here was where I think probably the most important, no, actually the next moment is the most important. This is still an important continuation. So how do we activate um, that attack on the b file? What should we play next?
Well, it looks just so mega obvious to get the bishop to b4, unless I have to calculate why this is not working. Because the queen went to c3, white
Mhm.
has to know that that's such a big option there. So the queen,
Right.
if the bishop would go to b4, the queen could only go back. So I assume the bishop takes
So the queen
on.
can't only go back. That was the issue here, is that they
Exactly.
actually are going to take.
And yeah, and this is an important piece, the knight for now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's not even about the knight, it's the fact that it's closes up everything. And well, h7, sure, but it's the fact that now at any point white can just play maybe b3 and
Yes.
kind of calm down. But maybe not right away, but at least this gives white some like room to breathe and some pieces to develop.
Hmm.
So bishop b4 was the idea that I wanted to save for later, but I wanted it to not be possible for him to take on d4.
Hmm.
So the way to make it happen is to actually just bring another piece into the attack
Okay.
so that the
How?
queen doesn't have good retreating squares on like c2.
Hmm. So bishop c6.
Exactly,
Hmm.
bishop to c6. So the idea behind it is,
Very
of course,
good.
bishop a4, and then bishop here would actually trap the queen,
True.
almost,
Yeah.
almost trap the queen. Yes, he can play queen c1, but then that's more passive, and then we can keep going. So this also is good because it activates the b file, and if anything, we can even think about um, like sacrificing something on that side of the board. And that's all leading up to the most important moment. He plays knight to f5, and this was
Oh.
where the long calculation happened, at least for me. And the thing is, at this point, after he probably had 2 or 3 minutes left. So this was already like a really tough decision for him to make. I had a bit more time, but it was already a really tough decision to make. So let me just
Hmm.
actually, I'll put bishop a4 on the board for you because I think we all realize that bishop a4 is the idea. So we start with that. And the calculation here that is for you and for everybody at home is what to do after b3.
Hmm. Well, I I wouldn't calculate for too long and just take, but probably it just looks like this has to work.
Yes, so of course
This
everybody would
must.
look at
Yeah.
taking, but the thing is exactly like with which piece, how to recapture, because it's actually, there's only a couple, like a handful of winning lines. It's
Okay.
not all of them work.
So, what would happen if we take with the bishop? I think this looks more promising.
Okay,
If we
takes.
take back with the knight on b3.
Knight to b3. And here, white, I think, has it pretty much like temporarily a save with king to a2.
Jeez.
And the thing is, we wish queen a5 happened, but there's no queen a5.
That is so funny.
So something like this is a possible line. To play knight to c1, and then if the rook takes, then we take on d3 and
Ooh.
threaten this. But again, white has like that extra piece and counterplay with knight to d4, and the best that black can do here now is just to go for this rook endgame and be on a pawn, which is good.
Yeah, but that is
Still
of
good, but not
course.
what we wanted out of
Yeah.
the attack. So that's why I was saying they look really nice. You know, it looks like it should be over. You know, you'd go for this in an online game, you would go for this immediately and just think that, okay, I'll mate somehow. But this was classical, and I knew that my opponent would be good at defending because there's no other choice left there other
Yeah.
than to find those few defensive
Yeah.
moves. So that wasn't one of the options.
So in this case, we have to calculate the knight taking first.
Yeah. There's also one more line with the queen taking here.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
that
if
I didn't
takes, then
consider.
like
Yeah.
this. And this is something I actually saw during the game, to go for this, and then there's no other option for the king other than here, and then I take the knight on f5. So
Ooh.
just another option, but that only regains the piece, you know?
Uh-huh.
So still good for black, but not like really a checkmate.
Not really.
So it was frustrating that there were no checkmates when it looks like it. So then you said calculate taking with a knight.
Mm-hmm.
So after this, oh, not this. After a takes b3, what do we do?
Can we not just take with the bishop now?
And that would actually give white the advantage. So this is funny. I saw this line during the game, and I thought it was like impossible that he saves it, but he does save it after bishop c2.
Oh, okay. I thought
And
something
the thing
else.
is that after they take, king takes, and there's no entry squares on the b file, and I don't have enough pieces to do anything else. You know, the knight is gone, the light squared bishop is gone. And even if we do a discovered check like this, then somehow white is still holding. And white even has the advantage, apparently,
Yeah, I
because of
mean,
that.
white has a piece more for now too.
Yeah. So the winning line, the one that I didn't see until the end, but I had a feeling about it, so I don't know if I would have gone for this during the game, was to take with the queen. So this was my main like calculation that I didn't get to the end to, but let me show you what the winning line actually was. I don't know if anybody actually got to the end of their
Yeah, I would
in their
be.
calculation, but it's very, very long. So takes, rook takes. I got here, I thought it looked pretty good. I calculated that if this, then I simply play bishop there and win the piece on d3, which is good because then also the rook on d1 is
Yeah, but
falling.
yeah, exactly. That's a win.
So this, I concluded, this one was fine. But the more interesting were the king a2 or king a1 lines, because I thought, okay, so I could take back the bishop, but then the bishop on c5 is hanging. So we
Yeah.
need to do something about that. I calculated some rook checks, and after this, I kind of got stuck, but the computer does find a win. So I basically just got stuck. I thought maybe it's just I take something, he takes, and we get two pieces for the rook in most of these lines. But apparently, black's attack is so good that this is winning. And the reason is rook here,
That would
and then
be.
any rook check, rook a2, let's say, or rook b2 actually is probably more straightforward. But any rook check, and then you take here, take, let's say they take there, and apparently this is just like I would stop at this line and think, well, white kind of got away,
Yeah.
two pieces for the
Not,
rook.
yeah, it looks even difficult for black.
Right. But the thing is, the reason why a computer thinks it's so winning and so good is because actually after the next move, there's all sorts of back rank issues, and there's not really much. There's not really much left to do because rook a1 comes next. But this is 10 moves away from b3 move. So can you imagine like going all the way here and being like, yes, black is winning. So
I mean, until you moved the bishop to a4, I didn't even realize it a single second.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, so I thought this was just insanely
yeah.
difficult, and I was considering I realistically I probably would have gone for this one, probably. Because I would say, fine, I have an extra pawn, king is
Hmm.
still in danger, my rook can invade, whatever. So maybe I would have gone for this one, but we'll never know because he didn't play b3. And I get it because he had very little time. So he was just like, okay, she's definitely gonna take, let's not even go there.
Yeah.
But he was also, after the game we talked, and he was also not sure that there was a win there. So we both kind of saw very similar lines, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would have had to really decide whether I would take with the bishop or knight. But that final position was really
Crazy.
complicated.
Very, very
I would have
interesting.
I would have totally taken, but I just don't know, like
Yeah.
I just don't know with what. I would just have to like make a decision right there. So he went rook to f1 because he just had to move the rook. Maybe he
Sure.
panicked a little bit, and it doesn't really matter where he moves the rook because the idea is still the same, exactly what we talked about earlier with bishop to b4. And now taking is not the same anymore.
Yeah.
Because if he does
Now
do
we win a
this,
piece.
then the queen is pretty much almost trapped. He can
Ah,
only
okay.
go there. But now we have all sorts of bishop takes there, and we can play bishop here, attacking this 3 times with basically no defense. And if this, then now I'll take, and this is a very
Now
simple
it's a
mate.
simple, yeah.
So at this point, he gave me one last issue to solve. He played a counter-attacking move, c5.
Mm-hmm.
Do we
Okay.
take? Do we not take? What do you think?
Well, we just win the pawn if we take the queen, right? So we take the queen on c3, bishop takes on b6, and we take back on b6, and they cannot take the bishop back. So we have a pawn more. Yeah, looks like.
True, but I actually didn't think about going for that. Well, no, I did think about this, but I didn't want this endgame.
Yeah, I understand. So let's, yeah, this is just like one solution. I want to check
Yeah.
out, um, can the queen just go to a5 maybe?
The queen can just retreat, so I chose the b7 square for the retreat,
Ah,
just to
yeah.
keep it on the b file,
Yes.
and also to prevent any, knight e7 or things like that. So
Ah,
exactly, the queen just retreats, and if you take, this is of course fine. It's something along the lines of what you said. If we go for this kind of endgame, then white is kind of a bit out of trouble. Of course, black is still nice. Like I like black's position, but it's kind of out of trouble
yeah.
already. I considered bishop takes, but then we removed our attack on the queen, and then white can just start hoping for something on the c file, for example. So, anyways, we almost get to kind of um, the final of the game. So white went away with the queen, pretty much no choice there for the queen. And now we attack the b2 pawn, exactly what I've tried to do for so long. Bishop to a3. And the thing is now, he also cannot
b3
go
is
b3
difficult now.
ever because the queen is there. I was just so amazed at how all of my pieces were working together
It looks
and in such
super cool,
in
yeah.
such harmony, and all of them are doing something super useful.
Like in the
And
handbook, which we have spoken about so many times as well, get all the pieces into the attack. I mean, they're all there. Like, except
yes,
the king,
exactly.
which is safe.
Now he takes, I took back, and that doesn't really save
Yeah.
the b2 pawn. There's no solution there. He plays c6 once again, just to make some counterattacks and see if I blunder anything.
Yeah, I
I
think you
took
can
back with the
just take.
bishop.
Yeah.
It's also nice that this is protected by the bishop, because I'm sure there's some
True.
queens, like there might be some ideas with knight e7, but it's all protected with that bishop. He played queen c2, and at this point, I got worried that I might not have mate.
Wait a minute. So, bishop a4 again?
Bishop a4 again, then maybe
No, then
b3.
just b3 now. That was the whole
Right.
plan.
But
Huh.
remember how the whole plan was to take on b2, like with the bishop?
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, okay, but if the bishop, then he takes on c6.
c6.
And then, like, I can't do a discovered check with the bishop because he's going to take my queen.
Ah.
And then, and if I take there, then he plays knight e7.
Oh, yeah. Can you show for
Yeah,
everybody
sure.
who's watching and cannot follow right now? That is, of
Yeah,
course, a
sorry.
very beautiful.
So if discovered check with the bishop anywhere, which would have normally been mate, but because the queen is here, white ends up being fine and trading the queens.
Yes.
And if I take the queen, then knight to e7.
Yeah.
And that doesn't only win the queen, but also, unfortunately, attacks both rooks.
Yes.
So
The worst part is there's not even a discover check like that. Like, really.
no, yeah, exactly. The bishop cannot even do anything. So it was a good last trick. And so that's why I got worried that, oh, what if he plays b3 next and then I have no attack? But luckily, I calculated into the endgame that after I take queen to b2, rook b2, all of my pieces are doing really well, and I thought that this endgame was winning. And the reason is, well, king to c1 is not a move. You're just going to play discover check. So king to a1, and that's another thing that contributes to black's such big advantage, is that the king is boxed in, and it will pretty much never escape if my bishop stays there, and it did stay there for a while. I played here so that I remove the defender from this pawn's advance.
And that the knight cannot give a check on e7 and take your bishop.
Exactly. That's also a good point, because this bishop, although it's still there, but it has a job of defending the rook, so it can't, I don't want it to defend both of these. So yes, I calculated into this endgame, and I tend to do this in my games sometimes, where if I have a really like crushing attack or something, but I see a safe line where I'm like 1 or 2 pawns up in the endgame, I'll go for it.
Carlsen
And sometimes that's a
style.
bad trait, because then I don't win any, then I sometimes miss the winning, attack to continue. But I really tend to do this a lot, that whenever I have a bailout, 2 extra pawns and game, I'm good. So
I can understand, but I'm not confident enough to take this endgame route, I would say, probably. So I would go for try to find the tactic or the winning strike or something.
trying to find the tactic. Yeah, but I do this whenever I can't find like that convincing,
I think
that convincing tactic.
That's totally legit.
So yeah, this endgame I thought was pretty good, and that turned out to be right, because there's not much white can do. So they had to get rid of the bishop, and this pawn is immune to all of the captures because of bishop b2, and it ended up just being a win after a couple of moves where the pawn got advanced, and the king also still continued to be a weakness. And this move threatens the rook, threatens mate. And after knight c3, I play it there, and there's no way to save both of these pieces, so the opponent resigned. So that was probably one of my best games of the tournament, with a really unexpectedly big attack, and it featured one of my favorite gambits too. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah. High class level, actually. Probably very precisely played. I think you hardly made a mistake here, or like seems
it was never like it. I don't think white ever had an advantage.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
I definitely didn't, find all of the best like first line moves, but it was always maintained within like slight advantage for black.
Well done, Svitlana. Yeah, very, very nice. Hope you enjoyed it as well at home. Thank you, Svitlana. And yeah, keep those strikes going on. 5 out of 5 is quite impressive, especially when there's 2.
Good start of 2024.
Yeah. But also, especially if there's like two FIDE masters who you have to challenge, and you just win. So yeah, and while you're studying all the time too, it's.
But the good thing about this tournament is that everybody is studying, because this is the
Yeah,
university
true.
championship, so everybody is studying.
All right,
Everybody's studying, and you get to meet a lot of people who I grew up playing chess with,
that's cool.
and yeah, and see where everybody's life went.
Thank you for watching. We see each other soon again. Bye bye.